So this is Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Spider-Man, and Flash. Fine, you want to change to Ultraman? So Flash and Ultraman. Are you playing? Play lah, what? Okay. Ultraman. Superman. Wow. Batman. Yeah, lose. Flat. You not play it? It's just one game. Three of us play together sometimes. Okay. So basically, like if she were to go, the two of us maybe. Stab.
Yeah, it's okay.
Why?
Okay, go bye. Okay,
Okay, ready and go. You lah.
Okay. And Flash.
Superman. Okay, one more time. Ouch.
Okay,
And go.
go.
Flash. Your turn.
Flash.
Wonder Woman. Superman. Batman.
Who's gone?
Ultraman.
Ultraman.
Hey, I lose. I lose.
cannot
You lose.
see you.
Okay, bye lah. Hey! Ah. Oi! Goes on and on, my friend. Some people started singing without knowing what it was, and they continue singing it forever just because this is a song that doesn't end. It just goes on, don't touch me, my friend. Some people started singing without saying what, don't touch me forever just because this is the song that doesn't end. It just goes on and on, my friend. Some people started singing without knowing what it was, and they continue singing it forever just because this is the song that doesn't end. What you doing? On and on, my friend. Some people started singing, no, but and they continue singing it forever just because this is the song that doesn't end. It just goes on and on, my friend. Some people started singing without knowing what it was, and they continue singing it forever just because. Oh, yeah. Lord, you don't know.
My name is Kavita, Artistic Director of Maya Dance Theatre. It has been a fabulous journey thus far, coming 10 years with Maya, with 2 cycles of artists who are completely very dedicated to what they believe. And I think that has kept us going for the longest time. I really would like to say a big thank you to all our sponsors and supporters who have believed in our work and brought us thus far. And especially in this production, I would also like to say a big thank you to Rahayu Supanga, one of the composers, and Kailin Yong, who magically brought the soundscapes to what we needed. And this wouldn't have been very much possible without the support of Jeremiah, the dramaturg, and all the artists that you see over here. Everyone played a complete cycle and togetherness to bring this work together. So just for my sake, can we just give another round of applause? We thought that it would be nice to add a little flavor to what you saw. Before I begin, is there any comments or feedback or questions that you may have? All right, maybe I start. This work started in 2012. It was Anwesha-The Quest. Anwesha itself means the journey to find something, and I was interested in finding the voice of Sita from the Ramayana. I just felt that she was very quiet, and that if given a choice, would she want to go back with her husband, or would she want to craft a path for herself? They all will sit down, but I will stand. Thank you. And so that was how it started in 2012, and we presented in Malaysia, Singapore, and in Indonesia with Rahayu Supanga's music. And Penny was the singer in that work as well, so that's when I got to meet Penny, and we've traveled time quite far. But in this rendition, coming back to 10 years of Maya, I just felt that this particular Sita that I am finding today, beyond gender, she's existing in our society, where her voice is silenced by the urban-ness of where we are, and many are left to find their own challenge and turmoil. And that was a struggle for me, is because apart from being the artistic director of Maya Dance Theatre and a dance artist myself, 15 years of my life is being an occupational therapist, particularly in mental health settings. And I first started my job at the age of 24. I was handling, as a single therapist, 98 clients were having depression or bipolar or schizophrenia in a residential care. Now, it's very, very tormenting for a very young person just out of school to be able to manage that space. So all these memories have been with me, and when it came to this subject, I felt I wanted to meet them back again, revisit them again. Some have said goodbye in a short time, leaving scars and memories, even for me, that I have not let them go. Some are still today. They came this afternoon. Some of the paintings that you see outside were made by my clients who were with me in Singapore Association for Mental Health. And it was so beautiful when 20 years later, when they saw me, they were like, hey, that's Kavi, you know, and that was meaningful for me. So I was trying to look for the Sitas who have been silenced by the urban-ness of our society due to stress, expectations, demands, whatever that's presented to us today, where there's so much of unrest in our environment. And I myself am fighting my own demon with this recurred back condition that just developed in October, and it has not been great. It does bring me back to my darkest moments because I'm a very active person. But then I keep finding hope and light through the support I get. So that's how this became very relative to my space as well, and it became extremely very meaningful. But I also realized that as we were going through this journey, a physicalization or a physical energy for this darkness needs to be understood. And that's where I requested Danang Pamungas, who's the other co-choreographer of the work, other than Shareen, who's also the co-choreographer of the work, to come to space to exercise this dark energy. It's very difficult to find this energy, and if you have a figure or you have a personality, it's easy to work with it. And so the journey began. And thanks to Jeremiah, who gave perspectives to this dark energy. You know, why should it just be something that scares you? Why can't it be something that plays with you? Why can't it be something that seduces you? And so there were many manifestations of this energy that we played with different people, because of course, to all of us who are down and dark inside, we see things differently as well. And so that's how the journey began. The initial interaction with the clients from Singapore Association for Mental Health Creative Hub gave us the inspiration to find some of the pictorial representations they gave us, particularly one which, if you go outside, please have a look with your reflections, a deep hole with a little guy, and that was very much identified to be Shireen, because when the clients came to the space and saw the rehearsal, he was very sure and clear that little guy in my deep hole is none other than this gentleman. So the quick identification came to the space. But as we were finding the darkness, we forgot about the brightness. So Jeremiah said, now where's the light? You know, it's like we need to give hope. We need to find the journey out of this dark space. And again, a picture, a visual image from their drawings shouted out. There are two, if you see outside, one that has got little circles, colorful circles, and you see bright rays coming out of them. And the other one is where there's a splatter of blue and red particles and beautiful golden lines like strokes coming out. And that was hope for her. I mean, with all these challenges I face, I see brightness, I see hope, I see light. So the journey to find light started in that way. I think I've said enough. So you have any questions? Maybe I'll leave the dancers to share with you the journey thus far. It's not been easy because we are entering a space that's not us. We had to read, we had to research, and it's extremely very daunting as well. So I'm going to pass to someone who wants to share. Sir? Sebastian gets arrowed because the youngest member.
Hi, I'm Sebastian. So currently, I'm a student at SMU at university. So I've been shuttling in and out of Maya the past 5 months for this production, and yeah. So this topic of stress that we are addressing, um, I very much bring it. I very much use my personal experience to extrapolate into this piece as well. So for myself, it's the stress that students go through. So yeah, the stress that comes from other people's expectations of you, your own expectations of your grades, and all of that. So and to some people it might seem like yeah, it's just a small thing compared to everything else that people are going through. But I do feel that it's all relative, because everyone has a certain capacity to manage stress, to handle stress, how we cope. Not everyone has a certain support system to help them through tougher times as well. So these are the thoughts that I bring into the work personally, and of course not just from my own experience, but from the experiences of people around me as well in the school environment. People who I have friends who study like overnight. They stay in school. They don't go back home, and they get really stressed out. And from that, they develop unhealthy habits. They overlook their health for their grades, and that's definitely not something that we want anyone to go through. In fact, yeah. So that was my thought process and how I built this character into this work. Yeah.
Articles from press were also stimulating ideas. I think we have read about the little boy who did not get the grades he wanted in PSLE, and he decided to end his life because he was just afraid to bring his grades back home. And the other one is the young lady who, after her delivery and a confinement period, went back to work and couldn't adjust. And people didn't pick up cues. I mean, it's like if your office environment did not pick up cues that something is wrong with this person, including the husband, did not pick up the cue that something is going on with her. And I think you could have read that she actually jumped down with the little child. So all these articles triggered me to go back to my space once again, to find materials, to find research to support the system. And Dr. Maithili Subramaniam from Institute of Mental Health Research Unit, she has written many articles with data about the Singapore society. And that helped me to also go further in the research materials, and it was then transported to the dancers as well as to the musicians. Noila is one person who was brought in to live the moment of the darkness, and she had to shadow Danang, who played the dark entity. Noila, maybe you want to share with us how was the creation of the sound was for you. Noila was not with us. She was in Australia. We were doing Skype, and technology helped us quite a bit in coming together as well.
Thanks, Kavi. Well, I flew in actually last Friday. When Kavi actually asked me this to come on board and join in this collaboration, it was sometime in July, and we had this chat about her idea and her concept. And I myself have been going through some really challenging times as well, and really dark place. I was in quite a dark place as well, and I took it on because I felt that this could be an outlet for me to really, I guess, sometimes I think when we think about depression, we think about an array of emotions, from sadness to anger to jealousy to everything, and sometimes rather than fighting it, the question we ask ourselves is, can we make peace with it? And so in these few months in the lead up to this project, obviously I was discussing with Kavi and Kalin as well, like how I was gonna bring Danang's character out. Was depression just something so present all the time in our face, or was it something that would creep into our lives when we don't expect it? And how would we, how I would, bring that out in the form of music? And so the process took, like when I was in Melbourne, so Kavi said to me, can you give me some soundscapes, some ideas of what sounds can you, give me? So I tracked myself, did some layers, and tried different sounds, and then said, okay, what do you think of the sound? What do you think of that sound? So it was very much an exploration process from start to finish. Like it's grown immensely from what it was before, to where it is, to what you see today. And coming into this space was just wonderful, working with the dancers, because everybody brings their own story. Everybody brings their own joy and their own pain. Early on we were in a circle and Jeremiah was saying, like, let's just breathe in the joy and breathe out the pain. It's beautiful because we were in a space and we all bring our own stories, and how do we as an artist, intertwine our stories, intertwine the good, the bad, the sorrow, the happiness, and all of that. So it's really been a very exciting journey for me, and actually I'm very grateful actually for this journey, because it's brought healing as well for myself. So thank you.
Thank you, Noila. Anyone wants to ask us? We're happy to talk. Any questions or comments you have, or observations you have made that we didn't see and we might help us to then revisit? Yeah?
I was actually like in the... Hello? Okay, great. In the beginning, as the audience was sort of entering the space and the five of you were sort of like playing cards and doing that superhero game, like it was sort of, I imagine there's a sort of like show of your personalities before the start of the dance, like how each character sort of is, and so like in the beginning it was really touching. It was sort of like a look through like a window of an intimate moment in a group of friends, but then as the piece sort of went on and you all reacted in these different ways to this dark energy, it was like I don't know if I can speak for the rest of the audience, but it was like I knew some of you on stage. It was really like close. So like, how did you sort of embody these characters? How did you choose these sort of archetypes to portray?
Okay, sure. I'm not sure that we each had an archetype in mind. We had maybe a collage of personalities or people that we know, or famous people, or stories like the articles that Kavi's talking about. Like maybe some of us, I'm not sure what everybody's process was like. So they were kind of a pastiche of a mix of our personalities and like things that we observe from other people. So for me, like some physicalities or some behaviors or like the way that I was responding to the situation, like some of it I think is how I would want to respond if it were socially appropriate, but some of it is from observing like children, or from observing maybe some clients, or just people on the MRT being very short-tempered, for example. So yeah, I don't think that there's not a very straightforward answer to that. But a lot of it was also we rehearsed a lot, and then there were moments where we would just like nitpick on one person and being like, no, you are responding in this way all wrong. Like your character, even though we don't really know these characters, like we didn't have a script and we didn't say, okay, this person has grown up in the 50s, blah, blah, blah. It's not that kind of script, but we did work together a lot to figure out some of the realities of how this person might respond and how we each needed to play off each other, so that like his storyline won't get hijacked by my responses. Yeah.
Something like that. Okay, actually our character get into shape as we get closer to the stage. Initially we didn't have a name, and then we slowly decided to give ourselves a name. So like I'm Shazam, I call her Margaret, but it's just Jane. And that's like Eve, I call her Lily, and that's like Sam, I call him Ben, because they look like these people to me, right? So, but because we gave ourselves a name, then we start believing of that person that we're playing, right? Initially, we all started out with like case study. I watched Netflix to get inspiration of people. If you watch Atypical, if you watch like some of this crazy ex-girlfriend, all this thing, it just feeds the character for myself to like play. That's for me. So from there, then I just feed to this character of Shazam, where he manic depressive, try to be all smiley, but actually is quite depressed. And he just built and built and built. And thanks to Jeremiah's guidance, he actually give us like cue points, like, hey, this is where your character can go. Maybe you can play up more. There's always light, there's always dark, there's always this kind of thing that actually shape the character for us.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Thank you.
It's quite interesting to hear how he took a perspective in this as well, and it was very necessary for the work, is because completely dances, and what's dance theater then in this space. So that's the dance theater narrative that came in to layer what we had today.
Yeah, hi. Well, thank you so much for inviting me to be a dramaturg for this piece, and it's my first time dramaturging a dance piece. I work in the theatre, and I look at things from the theatre point of view, and it's lovely to work with dancers and to give them a different perspective of what they do. Because I feel that dancers, they work from the body, they work from movements into emotion rather than the head into emotions like most actors does. So I think my role was to just sit there and respond to what they're doing and give them different perspectives. Of course, I cheated because from the theatre background, I used the typical theatre stuff like, what's the duality? Because in theatre, we always look at duality, like there's always hope, in sadness. There's always despair in joy. There's always, so I always push them the other way. It was very interesting because the first time I saw the piece when they did the four of them without Penny and without Danang yet, the four of them, I felt so depressed after 1 hour because it's so dark, it's so depressing. And of course, this is about beyond darkness, right? It's about depression. But I asked them, so where's the release? Where's the joy? Are we going to ask the audience to leave the theater feeling depressed? Is that what we want? So I started working with them about the light. I started asking, what is the salvation? Where is the answer? How do we release ourselves? How do we find salvation in this piece? It's so wonderful until 2 days ago before we started, and then I came in again after I came back from Brisbane. I went, where's the darkness? Everything is too bright. Everything is too hallelujah, right? Everybody is so joyful. I said, but this piece is about darkness. So I think my role is just to keep a third eye, to tell them. And thankfully, they're so perceptive to comments. Every time I say something, they worked at it. They really worked hard at it. I hoped that having a dramaturg on this piece really helped you all to give you perspectives. But I do think that dance is more than just technique. Dance is more than just pirouette, jump, and then wow, high kick and all that. No, this is dance theater. And there were some comments 2 nights ago that, where is the dance? I say, this is the dance and this is the theater. And if you go out thinking about depression, we've made our statement. So dance doesn't have to be always technique. The technique is inherent. Every one of them is a superb dancer. Make no mistake about that. But I think what they have done is they've moved towards theater, they've moved towards dance theater. It's something that we like to explore. Give us the space, give us the chance, give us that ability to explore, and that would be great.
Somebody? Faye? Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing, whoever has already spoken. And it's interesting to hear what Jeremiah had to say about the darkness and the light, because I felt that each time the light came on, I had to mentally prepare myself that darkness was coming next, because I would feel the lightness and then get even more depressed after that. So like, oh, again, and okay, sorry, not depressed. I'm not using proper terms, but I think this whole kind of subject area of mental wellness and mental illness is something that I've been wanting to know more about. So I felt really frustrated during the piece also, and I felt resistance, and I think that's part of my sort of discovery of what I'm resisting against. And one of it I have a question about. I think for Danang, the character is very stylized as a villain, and it's very clearly like in a Disney movie, you might say that's the villain, right? Very obviously. And that was my resistance, like that it's so specific and so explicit. I wonder if you could talk about that. Was it intentional? What was the thinking? Or how do you feel about it? Yeah.
One thing that which ran parallel to mental wellness in our society was also the story of Sita. So it was very necessary for me, who was Sita fearful about in her life? And in her exile in the Ramayana, she was constantly very fearful of Ravana, the king of Lanka. So as much as I had to find this dark entity to live in our society today, the dark entity had to be something that which she could relate as well. And so where the cross came in understanding, developing that particular character with its aesthetics. But apart from that, some of the feedbacks given by clients who I have worked with in terms of the dark entity, they came to space, they saw him as well, and they could relate to it. One of them told me today that the dark entity, like Danang, is exactly the one that talks to him, and that he wanted very much, he was very surprised that the same thing that talks to him was on stage. Yeah. And one other person also shared, which I just shared with Jeremiah just now, was that there's a painting outside there, and it has this painting with a green color hole tunnel. And he told me, he came very fast to me, and he was so happy, and he said, "Come, I have to tell you a secret." So I said, "Yeah, okay, what's the secret?" And he said, "You see, the guy who is stuck in this deep hole, he's released. He's no more in there. He has left after the performance." And that was surprising for me, is because he felt that that person was able to walk out of that dark space and go to another space. And so he wanted to tell that to me as a very important secret that I should keep, and that I should be understanding that I released this dark entity away from him. So that's how I felt that this character needed to be beyond just a bodily expression of darkness, but a sort of an aesthetic value of one that traveled from the epic as well to today. Do you want to add?
I think it's wonderful to hear that you were resisting to it and you were frustrated by depression. One of the first things I worked with Danan was to dehumanize depression. Because it's so easy for a dancer to say, "I am depression and therefore I dance depression." And for me, depression is actually not human. Depression is actually neutral. And depression can be a monster, but it can be a temptress, and it can be a seducer. I'm being seduced by depression most of the time as well. You know what I do is when I feel depressed, I tell them, I hold myself up in my little room, eat ice cream, and really wallow in my depression and sayang myself and all that. Then I feel I am back to myself and I come out of it. Every one of us has gone through depression, but how do we deal with depression is individual. But that's why what we wanted Danang to do is not to become depression, but suggest depression. And I think we found this, the bangles to suggest that. Because when we did the first duet between Subhas and Danang, it felt very homoerotic, which I thought was wrong. Because when depression was seducing Danang, it just felt like two guys dancing. And I immediately felt, no, it shouldn't be that. Then we found we found it through the bangles that were seducing it. So we suggested that depression is no longer Danang himself, but it's what he is representing. And we sought to dehumanize him as well. And the same thing goes for Penny as well. When Penny becomes Sita, we didn't want Penny to be too earthy, too motherly, too human. She must be goddess. At the same time, the goddess also can get depressed. You know, the best divas get depressed too, you see. So everyone gets depressed. So I think, you know, when you're feeling resistant to depression, all of us does that as well. And everyone has that demon to deal with it, and you have to deal with it in your own way. And that's how every one of them, all 6 dancers, deals with depression in a different way. Even depression has got depression by, he's got to fight depression with Shireen as well. That was the fight, you know, and depression lost in that way. And depression is this white elephant in the room. Sometimes it gets ignored. But our suggestion is anyone who recognizes depression or recognizes somebody who is falling into depression must reach out and help. And there are many ways of fighting it, you know, apart from shopping, apart from, you know, feeling happy. No, retail therapy is one way, but it's also another way of falling into deeper depression because of your credit cards, right? But what, I mean, yeah, we all laugh about it, but it's very real. It's very, very real. So I think what we wanted to do is to start this topic, to start you thinking about it, to start us thinking about it, and therefore we start talking about it to address this elephant in the room. I hope it answers your question. In a way, yes.
Well, we really like to say a big thank you to have joined us. And if you have any more questions, comments, we're more than happy to receive them as we, you know, find our way outside. I'll be snailing slowly. You can go past me. But please do drop your feedbacks because they are very helpful for us as we move forward. And also at the same time to give to our sponsors and supporters who have given us the support to say, yes, we are doing a production and feedbacks needs to be given back to them as well. My Dance Theatre ends its 10th anniversary with this production, and we will return next year visiting Pancha 3 installment, which is actually, Pancha is about 5 different female archetypes associated with nature's elements. We've already done 2 this year, finished last year and this year. And the next one is about home, earth, and it's on sexual abuse. So it's a very daunting topic, and I would love to see some of you to be in our space to address that social subject together with us. With that said, once again, thank you very much to all of them. And a big thank you to all of you.